Welcome. Today, we're going to go one-to-one with Adrienne Fox. We're hanging out at the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden, downtown, with a great backdrop, just talking about her journey as well as how that can impact others who have interest in sport, those that are looking to be better allies to the transgender community, and in general, raise more visibility and awareness on this special day known as Trans Day of Visibility. Our club is rooted in LGBT foundation as well as our allies. So we enjoy going to tournaments like the IGLFA Indoor Championship, which we've won the last 2 years, as well as going to the Gay Games every 4 years. We look forward to bringing more LGBT persons into our club as well as to the game of soccer. But today, what you're going to learn from Adrienne extends well beyond the pitch. So I hope you give the next 50 minutes or so the opportunity to really dive deep with Adrienne's life and see what you can learn, because I guarantee you will learn at least one thing, if not 10 today.
Thank you for meeting me here today on this lovely Sunday afternoon. It's somewhat cold and perfect for Minnesota. It's wonderful. I'm so happy I moved here. God, what has it been, 2 or 3 years already?
Has it?
Yeah, just about. I mean, I joined the Grey Ducks, in 2018? Late 2018? August, something like that?
Yeah, it sounds about right. It's kind of like a slow entry and trying out some teams.
Yeah, I mean, coming off a 14-year hiatus from playing, I think it was slowly get back into the game and somehow start playing 5-6 days a week.
Yeah, like it didn't take long to ramp up to that.
No. Finding my feet again. It's been nice. It's been a growing opportunity.
How'd you find the Grey Ducks, or how'd you find the idea to play soccer again?
The idea to play soccer again has always been with me, whether it's going out to a field and just running drills or shooting the ball from half and doing little things by myself. But the Grey Ducks came up through a mutual acquaintance. Like everything else in the LGBT community, it's community. So word of mouth really helps, and knowing somebody else in the organization was able to pull me in and get me associated.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, did you play as a youth, or?
Yeah, so I played throughout my childhood from like early Pee Wee leagues up until maybe freshman year of high school, first year, 9th grade. And yeah, when I turned 16, I just completely stopped. My mental health was declining, and just figuring out who I was a priority issue. And at that point, I was just tragically confused and couldn't really get into soccer. I wasn't going to practices, I wasn't showing up to tryouts, and it was just something that withered away from me. That's a shame. I wish I had continued playing, because sports has always been a wonderful outlet and a wonderful means of expression, and having that camaraderie or that growth with friends and teammates is, invaluable. And that's something that I've greatly valued joining the club as is, just how many people there are and the diversity within the club and all the travel opportunities and the opportunities to make friends and make memories, as much of a sales pitch as that is.
Yeah. Well, when you were 16 or so, what were some of the barriers? Were they your own, or were they societal, or what do you think as far as continuing in the sport as your authentic self at the time?
I don't think my authentic self existed at that time. When I was 16, transgender didn't really exist. I didn't have the vocabulary to understand what it was. There was no exposure or education around it. It was a coupling of my own ignorance coupled with being raised in a somewhat religious, conservative area where I just didn't have the exposure to it. I didn't know how to put to words what I was feeling, and whether it started with my sexual orientation and realizing that I'm attracted to guys and girls. Okay, how do I deal with this in this enclosed, repressive environment? Okay, something else is wrong. How do I understand this? Am I just fetishizing this idea, or am I actually experiencing something that's completely unknown and or completely different? It was a lot of confusion, and it was a lot to try to absorb as a 16-year-old when your emotions are, haywire, uncontrollable, erratic.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on in my head, and just it was just too much to balance with social obligations and athletic obligations and all that.
Do you think just having more resources is essential for youth to get through these periods, or is it family awareness or self-awareness, or?
I don't think there's any one thing that's more valuable. Absolutely, having the family support is one thing. That's something that prevents a lot of people from coming out, is just fear of how their parents are going to respond, or being disowned, or any of these other terrible stories that you hear about that are sensationalized in the media of, well, here's my coming out story and I was neglected. That seems to be the only stories that we hear, and that's terrifying for anybody who wants to come out. And then just having the community awareness and having those resources to reach out to and to know who to talk to and to know you're not alone it means a lot, to just not have to deal with it by yourself and to have someone hold your hand and help you understand this new vocabulary of things.
Sure.
And then just self-awareness and having that room to express yourself and to try new things and to realize that you might fall down, you might fail, but it's not the end of the world, even if you scuff a knee.
Were there things that you did that kind of got you through those tough years?
Oh, I mean, it was dark for a while. With the shifting priorities, I ended up dropping out of high school, which was a difficult decision, but it was one that my parents supported and the school supported, and I ended up working part-time and living off my own schedule, and just taking that moment for self-reflection and mental health and reprioritizing my life. With that, I was able to work, get a GED, and go to community college and bring myself back to a state of normalcy, or back to at least even keel, where I was afloat again and I could feel my thoughts being less clouded by everything outside. I don't think it was any single aspect or single thing that I did, because it was hard. Even in therapy, it was hard to open up about these things or to be honest with myself, because, again, I didn't have the resources or the vocabulary to understand it completely. I knew that I could understand my sexual orientation and my attractions, but I couldn't understand the other feelings I was having around cross-dressing or wanting to wear heels or play with dolls or these other traditionally gendered things that are really designated for boys at that age.
Sure. Obviously, it takes a lot of resilience to get through those dark years. And were there any cultural icons or people that essentially gave you that feeling that it gets better?
Looking at media, no. The portrayal for the trans community was always limited to CSI or the transvestite hooker in the back of a Crown Vic in the 90s. There wasn't a positive role model like there is now. The best I could do was turn to a few cousins, a few friends, and members of my family who embraced me and encouraged me, or got me literature like The Letter Q, which is a series of authors writing to their younger selves, telling them it gets better, and hearing actual voices of people who've gone through it, to know that, there's room for improvement and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. This is not everything that life has to offer right now.
Awesome. Yeah. That kind of brings us to present day, which is, are there persons or things that influence you? And it doesn't have to be, someone transgender or, just someone that you reflect on that motivates you.
Sure. I mean, the entire U.S. women's national team is filled with people my age that are worthy of being looked up to. They do a lot for the community, and they're wonderful advocates for very noble causes, and they are a diverse group of LGBT allied personnel, and that's a great resource to look up to. I mean, I always have this horrific body envy of Alex Morgan because we are the same age, and why don't I look like that? Ugh, I'm so fat.
That's
It's tough to deal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not all blessed to be supermodel soccer players.
Yeah, I'll get there one day. I just have to do a few more crunches, get the abs going. It'll be good.
That plastic surgery, etc.
Yeah, I mean, those are valid options. It's fine. But sure, there's plenty of people who are loud, proud, or even outside the community. There's a lot of positive role models to look up to and to try to emulate, or even just trying to be that person in and of myself through my own actions or outreaches or participation in different groups, whether that's promoting girls in STEM or women in technology, promoting trans awareness or LGBT rights or any of those other things. It's more finding the similar community and the similar like-minded human beings to associate with, to know that there's good in the world.
Absolutely. So, speaking of, what does it mean for you to be out, to be visible, especially knowing that it's not necessarily an option for everyone?
Oof. It's been hard. Being trans isn't something you can hide. I mean, the second you're out and the second you're trying to present as something different, you're going to get clocked and people are going to stare. I remember vividly going to a grocery store with my cousin for the first time in Virginia, and his initial reaction the second we got back in the car was, "Were they all staring at you?" And yeah, they were. It's uncomfortable. It's terrifying. And having the ability to be out in public and to be out at work and to be out with my friends, it's liberating, and I hope it serves as a beacon of light, not necessarily a role model, but it is an option and it is acceptable to be yourself and to express yourself and to live in an authentic manner. God, I hate dyslexia sometimes. Yeah, to be authentic with yourself from day to day, and you don't have to hide.
And how does that translate to soccer, do you think, in your experience there?
I mean, you were there for one of my first games where I got misgendered immediately and the game got stopped, and too many men. That hurts. That's not what I wanted to hear coming into soccer before I was on hormones, before I was really deep into managing my presentation. And I think it's changed, and having you on the field to come screaming out of the goal to go yell at the official of, "Hey, you can't do that."
I was horrified.
Yeah.
And I was subbing, so I was, very...
I was fortunate to have you there.
Yeah.
I do think more people would be willing to stand up for me now that that precedent has been set, to know that it's not okay to do that. But even in the last 2 years, it's been a work in progress, and it's been coming to peace with a lot of things. But I do think it has gotten a lot better, and being able to be visible within the league might encourage more to join the league or to get involved with soccer again, because there is this sense of losing sports when you're going from male to female transition, that it's too masculine, or it's not the ideal image, or it doesn't fit within the mold of what you should be doing as a pretty princess.
Yeah, or it's meant for a binary, and you may not be part of the binary in some instances.
Right, and that's a very valid conversation for what's going on right now in schools with the ban around transgendered athletes, and to the point of criminalizing them. That's horrific. That's inhumane.
Yeah, it cannot happen.
I mean, it can't happen, but it's happening, and it's going to tear apart their mental health if they don't have that connection to their friends or their community anymore. So being out in soccer and being able to participate in stuff like this, it's one voice, but it's one voice of many.
Because what they say, the NCAA has 200,000 college athletes, and only 50 are transgender. And it's a very small portion.
Right.
It should not dictate policy, nor any one person winning everything. There's a lot of misnomers and myths behind this.
I mean, it's easy to look to the Connecticut track incident where, 2 transgender women were dominating the track. That's such an outlier event where even within the levels of play in our community leagues, I'm far from the best female player in the league. I'm not faster, I'm not stronger, I'm not more athletic. I mean, sure, I can make a difference out there, but that's just from hard work and dedication. That's from training. That's from
merit.
yeah, that's earned, and I don't think my being trans takes away from anybody else on the field.
I agree. So, your first outing, into Grey Ducks and into soccer, you were misgendered. How did you get the confidence to come back after that? Are you used to people making mistakes and forgiving and moving on as long as things progress and get better? Or
Yeah, I guess that's a good way of putting it. At that point, I had been out for 6 to 8 years, so I've been used to the stares and the comments and just, I don't want to curse, but just having the water roll off your back, so to speak. And there is a certain element of just putting your head down and playing through and walking it off, which is something that I unfortunately learned as a boy, was rub some dirt in it, walk it off, you'll be okay. And it's mildly ironic that's coming back to play as a girl. So, full circle there, which is delightful, but there is a certain amount of elasticity or resilience that goes into it, and just understanding that this is an isolated incident, and this is not the majority thought on the idea. And I think since that incident, or since that event, you, the club, and even members within the league have done so much to create policies around it to make it more cut and dry about what the rules are and how this should be handled differently in the future. And that official even came up to me later in life and apologized, and everything went back to normal. So as much as it hurts in the now, it's not the end of the world, and there's always going to be coming back from it.
I'm sure it's extremely difficult at times being the only or being the first, and certainly you've been that in the league in our experience, and I think that's what has led to the incident as well as the solutions and the growth from it. So is it how would you describe your journey? Is every day hard? What are some of the challenges you go through, and what are some of the successes of your everyday?
Well, you brought up an interesting idea that of being the first is hard, and yeah, I'm also used to being the first. I'm usually most people's only exposure or corporeal understanding of how transgender exists in the world. And that's a lot of responsibility to be an ambassador for everybody I meet. And I have to be on my best behavior a lot of the time, which is stifling. Because sure, I want to say horrible, horrible things and not have people backdate my Twitter and cancel me. But what are you going to do? But, I mean, day to day has just been so different in the last 2 years. Whether that's starting hormones, and I don't remember if you remember this, but I was freaking out about starting, and I didn't know what changes were going to happen to my body, if I was going to be able to play again, if I was going to just deteriorate my muscle mass and not run or jump or play as hard as I used to. And that scared me, and I wasn't fully ready for that, to face that consequence of how permanent this is going to be. But since starting hormones and working out more and getting myself in better shape or more game ready, yeah, my day-to-day challenges are always changing, whether it's finding what to do with my hair, if I want to make up today, what am I going to wear today, or how are people going to accept me today. It's such a broad spectrum of things, and most days in the last year or two, since I've been on hormones, I've been misgendered less, and things have gotten easier. I will say that. So I don't feel those stares, or I don't feel them in a negative capacity. Yeah, I guess my biggest worry right now is people touching my hair, and that whole consent conversation as an adult of, yeah, don't touch me. It's great. I mean, it's luscious and wonderful, and everybody wants a piece, but no.
Do you find that you have to constantly present, what are common to cisgender people expectations for what a female is or presents as?
That's such a difficult conversation because there is this counter argument that transgender women are just fetishizing this masculine idea of what it means to be a woman. And I don't think I live up to any of those expectations. I play sports, I like cars, I get rough, I get dirty, I don't wear makeup. I'm not checking a lot of boxes of what society wants of women. And I don't know if that's a part of my own individual privileges. I'm sure it is, but I think it's easier to break that binary expectation and to subvert those preconceived notions of what trans women should be.
As we discussed, Trans Day visibility, a lot of it is about members being visible, but another side of it is creating more allies and accomplices to trans rights.
Sure.
A lot of people just don't know how to be a better ally. Do you have any advice on how people can be a better ally?
I mean, I will say the visibility is more driven to creating that, or starting that conversation of how to be a better ally, or to bring awareness to some of the atrocities or injustices that are occurring within the community. But in lieu of creating your own legislation and picketing outside the state government houses, it can be something as small as asking for the correct pronouns or having those conversations, or just understanding that certain things don't need to be asked. There's certain biological questions that aren't privy to the public, and just having some decorum about it and some respect. Those are probably the biggest things I can probably suggest to somebody who's looking to improve upon their allyship. Is read up on gender and how it relates to sex, because those are two very different concepts. Divorce the ideas of gender identity and sexual orientation. The two are mutually exclusive, which is a whole another conversation, and that confuses everybody. It's wonderful. And be aware of pronouns. If you want to start that conversation but don't know how, start with your own pronouns. That's a good icebreaker, and that at least indicates that you're trying, that you want to make a difference, or that you want to understand.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I appreciate you sharing that. It's not on you to have to educate everyone. It's
right.
really on others to educate themselves. But
there's some days where it feels like that, but it's easier than people think.
Yeah, especially some of us have more of a willingness to educate.
That's a generational thing. There's definitely a correlation there.
So obviously we're Minneapolis, our hometown. Top soccer,
obviously, yeah.
Top soccer team is Minnesota United. I've worked with them. I think you participated, last year in a Pride video.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Oh my gosh, yes, COVID.
2020 was a wash.
What's been your experience, and then I'll ask another question after that.
My experience with
Minnesota United and being a fan.
Being a fan, that's been a positive experience. They do a lot for LGBT awareness and rights, and just creating that presentation, whether it's virtue signaling or not is debatable, but just having the rainbow and having those Pride celebrations are wonderful. But there is some sense that the trans community is second class to the larger gay community, which is par for the course almost. It's almost an expectation that trans and non-binary individuals aren't getting the same conversation as gay, lesbian, and bisexual individuals, despite them having two separate struggles. It's hard to divorce the two.
What had you said? You had said, if we have LGBT, we need to talk about the T.
Right. There's the trans and non-binary individuals, and I mean, it's hard to be a ghettoized community in our already subjugated group. Like when you're second or third class to, I'm sure there's precedent or history around it where gay men have looked down upon trans women of, okay, we can be accepted into modern society or cultural normatives as long as we disavow those weirdos over there. And I feel like that mentality has stuck around longer than it should have, given the progressive attitude that people have started to speak towards. I don't know if the actions necessarily back it up at this point, but MMA and UFC have at least started that conversation, or started making progress towards that, and to be more inclusive of all aspects of LGBTQ.
Good to hear. As far as your experience, like being able to go to the stadium and in that aspect, do you feel it's a welcoming space as a trans individual, or?
Yeah, it's been welcoming. It's been fun. I haven't had any incidents, issues, or confrontations. I don't feel like I'm out of place there. It's a positive environment. It's a welcoming environment. It's a warm environment. I don't have anything negative to say about the fan base or the stadium or the staff in and of themselves.
Good to hear. As we try to be more visible in the community, for others to join sport, join soccer, or let's just say sport in general, how can clubs, we're talking rec soccer community, because 99% of transgender persons as adults are more eligible to play recreational sport. How can we be sure to better serve non-binary trans community members?
A lot of it's just coming down to those little signals or cues, and using the correct language, or using more inclusive language, like women, WONXN. That's a big one for creating a non-binary and gender inclusive terminology, or verifying that rules are in place, or understanding that certain allocations have been made to protect these individuals, and then publicizing those and ensuring that this is a safe space and we do accept you as you are. That would help bring more people into it, whether it's at a introductory recreational level or even a more competitive level like we play at.
Awesome. And as for trans persons that may be interested in playing sport, would you encourage them to seek it out? And if so, what are some of the benefits that they could see in joining community sport?
Sure. I would most likely recommend it in most cases, on top of just being good for your physical health and taking control of your body in that aspect. Being active and having this routine schedule and going out and being somewhat social has been phenomenal for my mental health, and I feel like I'm finally in control of my body again, and I'm in control of how I present myself, which is everything right now. But even more than that, going beyond the personal health benefits and the superficial aspect of it all, it is having that camaraderie, that community of not feeling so isolated and feeling so alone, and to know that you have friends and you have allies, and you might be able to get to travel to Vegas. Who knows? It's great.
Hopefully further than Vegas someday.
Let's start small.
Do you think there are any barriers that remain to someone participating in local sport?
It depends on the league. I don't know how formalized or disseminated a lot of these trans-friendly or non-binary friendly policies are. I couldn't speak to the larger community of co-ed sports really apply to all gender and not the gender binary. That takes a lot of understanding and might be outside the scope or purview of my knowledge, but I think it's getting better, but I don't know if it's fully there yet, because again, I am most likely the only trans person in a lot of these instances, and that's going to warp my perspective or understanding of how everything's perceived. I don't think sports, athletics, any of this is as inviting or open or accessible to other trans individuals who may otherwise want to get involved, because they aren't advertised as such for including the other, so to speak, which is it's alienating.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's something I've struggled with is how do you break that barrier down? How do you get that language across? And so one of the things I thought was cool is your social media. You have a photo of your shoes.
Oh, my cleats?
Yeah.
They're in my car, but they're a little dirty right now. But I think that's an apt metaphor.
So did you choose the colors of them as relation to the colors that are commonly identified as the transgender flag, or is it just coincidence? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if everybody has seen my cleats per se, but they were entirely customized to be blue, pink, and white with trans pride laces, and they have pride coming up the inside of them with my name and my number all over them. They're exclusively or targeted to be trans pride cleats to signify who I am as a person and as a player and what it means to step on the pitch every day. And the fact that they are so dirty right now is a wonderful metaphor for how dirty it can be to be out and proud and sometimes a hostile or unwelcoming environment.
Do you think having that customized shoe really kind of gives you confidence and gives you a superpower per se?
I look down at them and I do feel that pride, and I do feel vigor and energized, and I do want to push myself harder to be better, to improve as a soccer player, to live up to this standard that I set for myself by spending this kind of money to customize my own cleats to represent something that's bigger than I am. I mean, if I'm out there representing the trans community every game, multiple nights a week, I'm putting a lot of weight on myself to perform and to be a good sport and to be as warm to others as I want them to be to me. And there's a responsibility, but I do think it also encourages better sportsmanship from me.
My question to you is, what does it mean when you see your teammates show allyship?
It means the world to me. It makes me feel welcomed and like I'm a part of the group, that I'm involved, that I'm wanted, that I'm not just some token minority that checks a box that we can now call ourselves an LGBT club. It goes beyond words. I remember one of my teammates back in the 2018 women's, when we were playing MWSL for the first time, came up to me later in the session and told me that they had no idea I was trans, and oh my god. Stuff like that always makes me smile, and I can't express the amount of love and admiration I have for every teammate who's stood by me with pride, who's held me by the shoulder or by the waist when we take a team photo together and just smiled a genuine smile because they like me as a person and not as a vulnerable minority. So something like that, of Trist holding up a sign, or just the unbridled support that I get from everybody else, it makes it really worthwhile for all the negative moments.
I bet. Like that was part of my struggle too, as a gay man, but even as doing this project is the success. How I defined success is, just to be part of, the mass, to fit in, to be simply accepted. And so I think to stick out or to prop up one instance or one person. I think you and I even talked how we don't like to be that center of attention. So I think
that's such a double-edged sword because of who I am as a person. I stand out a lot. Like, back when we were in Vegas in 2020 or January 2020, I was there previously for a convention, and people at the Cosmopolitan recognized me, and I was like, okay, how much do I stand out if I'm being clocked in Vegas as somebody that they've separated by a couple of weeks? Like, I stand out. I have glorious, colorful hair, and I'm tall and beautiful, and just I don't like being the center of attention, but I also know that eyes are on me a lot. It's interesting. It's a weird dichotomy.
Absolutely. But I think on the bright side of that dichotomy is that to be visible and to be seen, hopefully, is leading others to find their most authentic selves. Whether it's in sport or out of sport or whatever they're into. I think that's
right. That's the dream. That if my smile can inspire somebody else to smile, then I've done something worthy with my life, even if it is just one person, or if that means somebody else can find the strength to come out, or somebody else can find the strength to get back to something they love, whether that's sports or getting back to a larger community, and not being afraid of the gender binary or the gender expectations or gender normative behaviors. For everything that I do to stand out, I think it comes with a larger impact than I will ever actually realize.
I agree. I don't think sometimes the amount of positive impression that you can really have on others, and discussions I have, and so you should know that you really do leave a positive, long-lasting impression. We're very lucky to not only have you in Minnesota, but have you in our club and in our sport.
I'm honored just to be here and to be able to play again, and everything else is just bonus points. This club has been so fantastic for me in my own personal journey and my own personal coming out adventures and misadventures sometimes, but I'm a better person for being here, and I'm a better person for every person I played with. And hopefully I can continue to be a good teammate for everybody. And that's more what I'm concerned about, is if I'm carrying my own weight on the field, then I'm okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What are a few things that, what's been your favorite memory of returning to soccer?
Oof. There's been so many. I think Vegas was, in and of itself, one experience that I'll never forget. Even if it was coming home covered in bruises from all the shots I got blocked, or going 2 for 2, 3 for 3 on PKs and all gender Division II play, or winning third place twice in 2 different divisions. I mean, I still look back at that with so much pride and admiration for what we accomplished as a club and what I did as an individual player. What was that? Some 17 to 18 games in 2 days? That was insane. I mean, there's been not so great memories that I'll hold with me for the rest of my life, unfortunately. Like dislocating my shoulder in 2018. That's living with me in a way that I never really wanted it to. I don't have full mobility in my arm. I think it's really the things that happen outside of soccer, whether it's going to see the U.S. women's national team play in their victory tour at Allianz Field with a couple of my teammates and my friends, or going to a local brewery with a group of teammates and friends and just having fun, or celebrating my golden birthday. I'm not going to say how old I am, but having that moment to spend with my teammates and my friends.
I think that's really everything I had in mind.
And I'm glad to see that this club and you as its leader are leading that charge, or leading that march towards inclusive terminology, inclusive language, and inclusive rule set.
And thanks for watching. And thank you, Adrienne, for your courage and your friendship. Stay tuned for more content like this, and we look forward to bringing it to you soon.